Hi, everyone. My name is Liz Heyer. I'm one of the travel directors for Eden Prairie Travel Baseball, and just wanted to walk through some of the ins and outs of playing travel baseball in Eden Prairie. So what we'll go over in this conversation is an overview of travel baseball, tryouts and team selection, the time commitment and expectations, how we select our coaches, and just a little bit more information about coaches and team staff, playing time expectations, conduct expectations, and then the travel parent experience. So as I mentioned, my name is Liz Heyer. I am the director of travel baseball for the junior division. I have a player who has played in Eden Prairie for the past 4 years and is currently a 14U player. This overview is intended for anyone who wants to know more about EPBA travel baseball. It's mostly going to be geared towards those of you who are new to travel baseball, but there should be something for everybody here. So first, just a little bit of an overview of the Eden Prairie Baseball Association organization and the board. So we are a volunteer-run organization. All of us are volunteers. We have a couple of people who are paid a small amount, but for the most part, every single one of us has another job or maybe more, and we are volunteering our time to make sure that the entire baseball association, not just travel, but we have a community league as well, and a few other aspects of it. All of that is run by volunteers. We are all volunteering our time. Our president is Kevin Thompson. Ryan Kep is the vice president of travel. So Ryan and I work very closely together. Joe Peterson's our vice president of the community league. Eric Karen is our secretary, and Emily Sirkayan is our treasurer. We have other full board members, and then we have other associate board members who are non-voting. We always welcome people who are interested in joining the board. You can always come by and sit in on a meeting and just kind of listen to what we talk about. You can ask questions too. It's not like you have to be silent. We have our meetings the second Monday of each month at 8 o'clock in either the Eden Prairie Community Center, or we sometimes hold them virtually during the season. If you want to know more information about when our next meeting is, or if you want to attend, or maybe even if you want to be a volunteer and be part of the board, you can reach out to Eric Karen for more details on that. As I mentioned, we're always looking for people who want to be part of the board. If you are a full board member, you also have your volunteer hours fulfilled, which I'll talk about a little bit later. So as I mentioned, we are a completely volunteer-run organization, which also means that we are a mission-based organization. So our bottom line is not dollars, it is, are we fulfilling the mission of the organization? And our mission is the Eden Prairie Baseball Association is dedicated to preparing children for life through the game of baseball and the accountable acts of our core values. For me, this is really important. It is about baseball. I love baseball. I absolutely love watching my kid play baseball, and my kid loves baseball. So all of that is really important. But what I really understand is this is really about teaching my kid and all of the kids that play in Eden Prairie about life and preparing them for life skills through the game of baseball. That's the vehicle for teaching them all of these life skills. So with that in mind, our core values are relationships, which means that we're respecting our community, the other players, the parents, and our opponents. We are demonstrating selflessness, so we are making others a priority. This is our accountability to our team. And then accountability is a core value in and of itself. We are delivering on our commitment. So we say we're going to be part of a team. We're going to be part of that team. We're going to show up. We're going to play as part of a team. This is not an individual sport. It means that our team's counting on us to be there and to show up and to do what we said we were going to do. And then on excellence, giving our best effort. So obviously, not everybody's going to be on their A game every single time, but giving it your best effort. One of the things I've always told my player is that you don't have to be the best one out there, but you do need to be the hardest trier. So that's what I'm looking for always, is that my kid is out there trying his hardest and really putting in his best effort. And that's what we're looking for in all of the players too. We don't expect them to be perfect. We just expect them to be putting in the effort. And all of these the mission and all of our core values, they apply to everybody across the entire organization. So that means our players, but also our coaches. It means us as parents and all of our volunteers as well. Anybody who is associated with Eden Prairie Baseball Association is expected to be following the mission, fulfilling the mission, and displaying the core values that we have. So, who plays travel baseball? So, our travel program is for baseball players who are 9 to 15U who reach their league age on or before May 1st of that year. So, if you don't already know what age level your player plays in, there is a widget on our homepage. I think there might be one on the travel page as well. You can enter in your player's birthday and their grade, and it'll tell you what they should be playing. For the most part, they're going to play with their grade. And so, if you have a player, a kid who is like super old for their grade or super, super young for their grade, there may be some ability for them to play differently, but almost all the time, players are playing with the other kids that are in their grade level. So if you have questions about that, feel free to reach out. This year is also the first year that we are offering travel baseball, a full travel baseball program for 9U players. So that is a new thing for us. We are running it just like we have run all of our 10U and on up age groups. So that means that there are full 14 league games. I'll talk about that a little bit later, and then possibility to participate in state tournaments in July as well. So we're really excited to be able to offer that. That's all based on parent feedback. We did a lot of research to figure out if we wanted to offer this or not, and there were a lot of people that said they wanted that. So that's what we're doing this year. We're going to see how it goes. I do want to say about travel baseball is that it is definitely more competitive than our community league, and it also requires much more of a time commitment. Travel baseball is not for the kid who is like, I kind of like baseball, but I also kind of like doing other stuff too. It they need to be into baseball for sure. We do see sometimes where the parent really wants the kid to be into baseball, and if that's the case, and if the kid's not really feeling it, then maybe community league is a better place. It's definitely going to be a different level of competition, but the commitment is much less. We expect that anybody who's playing travel baseball is committed to travel baseball. That means even if you're doing other activities, that if those two activities conflict in some way, that you're going to choose baseball. So you're going to be at all of the tournaments unless there's some absolute big reason that you cannot be there, like your cousin's getting married and you're in the wedding, or something along those lines. But for the most part, we're expecting that people are going to be committed to travel baseball during the time that we're playing. And if that's not something that you feel like you can do, then travel baseball probably is not for you, and you can check out our community league. So we have within travel baseball, we have divisions within those age levels. We have 2 to 4 teams at each age level. Kind of depends on how many kids try out, how many kids want to play, how many kids we feel like have the ability to play at this competitive level. There are divisions within each age level. So that could be a single A, double A, triple A. And the number of teams and the divisions depends on, again, how many players tried out and also what the previous year's performance was. So sometimes we have an age level where we had a team, for instance, last year we had a team that played at the double A level, and they did really, really well. They came in first in a couple of their tournaments. They placed really well overall in the state championships. And so this year we needed to move that team up to a triple A team. That was from our league, which is the Metro Baseball League that said that. And the same thing can happen if we go the other way. If a team is at a triple A and really didn't do very well at all, and maybe we even lost a couple of players from one year to the next, we might bump that team down to a double A team. Teams where we have a lot of kids, we might have 2 single A teams or 2 double A teams. Again, depending on how many we have and how many kids want to play, and how many, what we think the competitive level is of those. Um, we have to make estimates of what those the numbers are going to be and what the team levels are going to be, because we have to register for tournaments way back in December of the previous year. We also have to let our league, Metro Baseball League, know what teams we're planning on. However, we don't really actually know what that's going to look like until after tryouts happen. So sometimes there are some changes there. We just have to make our best estimates, and also who's on those teams. Um, we don't know that either until we have tryouts. So I'll talk about that in a little bit too. So tryouts, for our 12 through 14U players, we actually did something new this year, and we did a fall tryout. So those players tried out in October of 2023, and they've been working out all winter. And then we will form those teams in a couple of weeks here. And then for our 9 through 11U and our 15U players, their tryouts will be on Sunday, March 10th. Now, if you are unable to make the March 10th tryout date, we do have a makeup date on Sunday, March 3rd. This is a little bit different than how we've done it in the past. We've previously had 2 weekends of tryouts, and players can come to one or both of those. However, we are narrowing it down to just one day, and that's the 10th this year. But if you can't make it, we do have a makeup option on Sunday, March 3rd. So that's obviously before that March 10th date. If you feel like you are going to need that, there is a place in the registration where you can mark that, and we're checking through those to see if anyone checked that. But the best way to do it is to email myself and Ryan at traveldirectors@epbaseball.com for more info on the makeups. We can get you in there. Just let us know before Saturday the 2nd, or by Saturday the 2nd at the very, very latest, and we'll get you in there. All of the tryouts are at the Eden Prairie High School Dome. If you've never been there before, it's in the back part of the high school, right next to the big football stadium. So you can't miss it. It's the big white bubble that's back there. And the specific times for the age groups are available on the travel information page at epbaseball.com. So they're actually in a couple of different places, but that's the best place to go. And you'll also find a whole lot more information there. Some of the stuff I'm talking about right now, but even more information will be there as well. So definitely check that out if you haven't already. Okay, so once they get to the tryouts, we would love to be totally perfect and have some beautiful, perfect way of identifying kids for teams, but that's not possible. So we do our very, very best. We have put a lot of thought into the process to make it as accurate as possible, to make it as fair as possible. To me, that's something that's super important. The scores stay very confidential. However, I always operate as though if the scores were to somehow become not confidential anymore, that we could justify all of the decisions we've made based on the scores that we have. So that's something that's super important to me, and I want you all to know that you can have confidence that we are making the best decisions that we have. Now, I know you're not all going to be happy with whatever decisions we make, and that's okay. I understand that. Would love to have conversations about that if you need to, but please do know that we're trying our very best and trying to make it as fair as possible. So to that end, players, when they arrive to tryouts, we give them like a runner's bib with a number on it. There are no names attached to this. Our evaluators only have a number. They don't have a picture of the kid. They don't have the kid's name, nothing. They just see this is number 237 standing in front of me. That's all they know. We do have our expected head coaches available, or they are present at the tryout so that they can observe the kids playing, and some of them might know the kids' names, obviously, but our evaluators do not know who those kids are. So we keep it as anonymous and unbiased as possible. They will be assessed on a few skills. They'll be fielding ground balls. They'll be hitting front toss, and then hitting from a machine, or sometimes we do a coach pitch depending on the age of the kid and the availability of our equipment. Base running, we may take that out this year. I might have left that one in from last year. And then pitching. And the pitching scores are not factored in to the overall score. So don't panic if you're like, oh my gosh, my kid just, hasn't pitched before, or just learned to pitch, or it's all over the place, especially with the younger kids. We know that that's what it's going to be. But for all across all of the age levels, pitching is not factored into their overall score. We just kind of want to get an idea of which kids are already really strong at pitching, and which kids maybe need a little bit more work on that. We do try to focus on making sure that all kids are pitching. So that's something that we teach all kids to do. There's also a situational station, and this is where we'll put kids out in the field and say, like, okay, pretend there's a runner on second and there's two outs and the ball's coming to you. What are you going to do with it? So we're just kind of trying to watch what they do with it. There's no need to like prepare for this or anything like that. It's really just to kind of get a sense of how they are in the field, because we're doing drills essentially. We're not watching them play an actual live game. So this is just to kind of get a little bit more of a sense of what they already know and what skills they have yet to learn. And our coaches will observe in this area. Our evaluators may take some notes for the coaches in this area as well, but that is also not factored into the overall score. So pitching and situational not factored into the overall score. Our evaluators are our Eden Prairie Legion and Junior Legion staff. So they are very experienced with Eden Prairie baseball. But again, they're kind of far enough removed from most of the kids that they don't really know who these kids are. So that is really helpful. And then parents are just to clarify, parents are not permitted to watch or volunteer during their players' tryout time. So we do ask that you drop your kid off, you get them checked in, you drop off any checks that need to be dropped off, maybe help them get their bib pinned on, and then tell them good luck and that you'll see them at the end of the tryout, and then you can leave and pick them up at the end. So just to make sure you're all aware of that. If there is a question about a kid's evaluation, especially one that maybe has played a year or two already, and a kid has just maybe a evaluation score that's really low and doesn't seem to jive with what we know about this kid, we do have a couple of other things that we can go look at for our kids who have played before. We have some other data that we can go look at. We have some coach evaluations from the previous season. That we can review just to see, like, is this really how this kid normally plays, or did they just have a bad day or something along those lines? So also don't panic if maybe your kid just is having an off day, maybe they're not feeling their best on the day of tryouts. We're not trying to like make this a super high stakes, stressful situation for the kids or the parents. We just want them to go out there and play their best and have fun, and we will hopefully get them in the place where it makes most sense for them to be. So the team selection, the teams are formed after that March 10th tryout. The way it works is each head coach meets with me and Ryan, and we show them a list of just the kids' numbers. We don't include names at first, and we just have them kind of make their selections from the numbers alone. So they're not looking at names. Um, we require them to take the top 6 ranked players that are available for that team. And then we show them the next 8 to 10 players, kind of depends on a couple of factors, but we show them the next sort of set of players, and they can then fill out their roster from those next players. We do eventually show them the kids' names, but the idea is that they're making their initial decisions based on those numbers and what kind of player they're looking for, especially as we get to the older years. They're looking for, do we have a kid that can play first base or that can play the infield? And do we have some kids that can play in the outfield? Do we have kids who are catchers? Do we have kids who are pitchers? They don't, as I mentioned before, we try to develop all of the kids as pitchers, but it's good to at least start out with a couple kids who are strong pitchers. But it's not gonna like hurt your kids' chances for making a AAA team, for instance, if everything else looks good, but their pitching is maybe not so great. That's not gonna be a factor in that. So we just want to make sure we've got a handful of pitchers and catchers on each team. We don't assess catching. We just ask the kid, do you catch? Younger kids, we'll figure that part out. They probably don't know if they want to catch yet or not. And so we kind of, again, teach a bunch of them how to catch if they're interested in doing that. Coaches are not officially assigned a division, so the single A, double A, triple A, until tryouts have concluded. So we have some ideas of who's going to coach which different division, because we have to. And that's based on previous information that we have. However, um, we don't know that, and we won't know that until we have all of the scores and are making team selections. Again, we are trying to be as fair and equitable as possible here. And so we need to look at where those coaches' teams or those coaches' kids land in the lineup to be able to decide who those coaches are. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute too. The teams are confidential until we set a time and date for them to be released publicly, where we will post them on the website. For our 12 through 14U players for the 2024 season, that is after 4:30 on Friday, March 8th. That is intentionally done because most of those players all go to Central Middle School, and the goal is for it to not A, disrupt the school day, and B, we're trying to minimize the amount of hurt feelings that might happen because all of the kids are in the same spot at the same time. So we release that after school on a weekend, just to minimize that as much as possible. For the 9s through 11s, we will release that in the team information after 4:30 on Wednesday, March 13th. And for our 15Us, we need to coordinate with the high school tryout. So that one does come a little bit later. I don't have an exact date for that one yet, but it does come a little bit later for the 15Us. I do want to just make a personal note here on not on what team your kid lands on. I had an experience where my player did not land on the top team and was pretty disappointed about that. But what we learned over the course of that season is that he actually was in the exact right spot for him. Um, he actually grew a lot from being on that team, and it really turned out to be the best situation. So I just want to kind of put that out there that if the teams come out and there might be some initial disappointment, totally understandable, and that makes perfect sense. And I'm certainly not saying don't feel that, because you feel that for sure. But also keep in mind that there may be some really positive outcome out of this that is difficult to see right at the beginning. So just keep that in mind, and that's something to also help your kid through too. So we're not going to like get upset or outwardly show. You can express some disappointment, but maybe also help them understand that we're going to make the best of this, and maybe this is a great opportunity that we didn't even know we had. Okay, so now getting into the time commitment and the expectations around playing travel baseball. So for this is across all of our age levels. We start in April, except for our 15s. Our 15s are going to start a little bit later because we have to wait for the high school season to get done. But for everybody else, we're going to start in April. And we're going to start with some indoor practices. We practice over at the Nevers Larkin facility in Edina, if you're familiar with where that is. We always schedule indoor practices there starting in April. And then depending on the city of Eden Prairie, we may be able to practice outside as well. Especially this year, we're fingers crossed. We haven't had as much snow, but now that I said that, I'm sure we're going to get a giant dump in April. So I'm sorry. But we definitely have those indoor practices scheduled. And then we may add some outdoor practices. So the indoor practices are 2 practices a week. And they are, I believe, one on the weekday, one on the weekend. The weekday one is 60 minutes and the weekend one is 90 minutes. And we'll put that schedule out probably once we release the teams so that you can see what that schedule is going to look like. And then once the regular season starts, which is technically mid-April, in Eden Prairie, I don't think I've ever seen our fields open before the 1st of May, but some other communities may potentially have fields open in late April, and so we could start having games in mid-April. So the regular season games, there are 14 regular season games. They could be anywhere. They could be anywhere in whatever your region is. Um, each team gets assigned to a region through Metro Baseball League. They try to make them neighboring communities. Sometimes they're a little bit further out depending on the age level and how many teams are available. But they're usually fairly close by. You're most likely not going to be driving to Woodbury on a weeknight. But you may be driving to Waconia on a weeknight. So those are some possibilities. Regular season games are weeknight games. They usually begin around 6. Sometimes they could be as late as 8, depending on the association, if the association's fields have lights, and whatever their rules are. But expect a 6 p.m. start time for most of them. Players are usually expected to report 30 to 60 minutes before game time. I'd say most of them are 60 minutes before game time. So and that's just to get ready and warmed up, and that might be an area where if you're coordinating adults' work schedules and things like that, you might need to have some carpool situations. But I have found that most parents are really willing to help out with that kind of thing. Coaches may also schedule. Oh, and also the league games there's also going to be practices. So whether they're the indoor ones in April or the all outdoor ones starting most likely in May, you're going to have league games and you're going to have practices. So you can expect to have anywhere from 3 to potentially as many as 4 or 5 baseball events during the week each week. So that's just something to be aware of. And then coaches may also schedule some additional scrimmages if they want to kind of get some more real life gameplay action feel without it actually counting for anything. And then occasionally, if league games can't be scheduled on a weekend or weekday for some reason, they may be scheduled for a weekend, but that's fairly rare. On the weekends, however, are tournaments, and each team is scheduled for 4 tournaments. They are usually 3 that are in the Twin Cities metro area, and then 1 that is further away. So maybe an hour or so away, maybe a little bit more. Usually something that requires some overnight travel. That's where the real travel comes in, is that one travel tournament. Sometimes coaches might, especially at the older ages, might schedule an additional tournament, but you'll have to check with your coach on what is going on there with that. Tournaments for the most part are Saturdays and Sundays, but sometimes they are scheduled for Friday afternoons. And it does happen that sometimes you might have like a 3 o'clock game on a Friday or something along those lines. It's not super common, and most of the or the tournament directors and the associations will try really hard to not schedule an Eden Prairie team at a Woodbury tournament to play at 2 o'clock on a Friday. But it does sometimes happen. So just be aware that you might need to pull your kid out of school early on a Friday to go get them to a tournament. And it's certainly not ideal, but it does happen. So just heads up that that's something that you might need to expect. And also the other thing to know is that weekend games can be as early as 8 a.m. And if you've got to report 60 minutes ahead of time, that's a 7 a.m. start. It's a lot, and you could be playing 2, sometimes even 3. I could potentially play 4 games during a tournament if you make it to a championship in one day, which is so much. We know it's a lot. But again, just want to give you a heads up that is definitely a possibility. Again, the expectation is that your travel team is your top priority during the season. So if you've got something else going on that weekend, I know sometimes people want to like go to a cabin or things like that. The expectation is that you're going to be at the tournament unless it's something that is really totally unavoidable. And if that is the case, please do let your coach know as far in advance as possible, because if we have more than if one kid is out, that's not usually a big deal. If 2, maybe 3 kids are out, they might need to go look at finding a kid that can come and play with the team for that weekend. So it's really, really important that you make sure that that is communicated early and often if that is the case for you. All tournaments are up on the travel webpage right now. There might be a couple of small changes that need to be made, but for the most part, the tournaments are up there. Obviously, we don't know teams just yet, but it does kind of give you ballpark idea of when your player might be playing in weekend tournaments. One other thing I just want to note is that your player cannot be double rostered. So if your player wants to play on a club team, for instance, we don't allow players to play on a club team and an Eden Prairie Travel Association play at the game or team at the same time. So if you have any questions about that, please reach out to us. But again, we're expecting that Eden Prairie Travel Baseball is your top priority during the season. If you didn't already figure it out, you can expect to spend most of your weekends between May and mid-July at baseball tournaments. So I mentioned that you've got your four tournaments that are planned, and a couple of teams are going to have 5 tournaments, maybe even 6. I don't know if we have anybody with 6, but we definitely have some with 5. And then your state tournaments are in mid-July. And those, if you're participating in a regular tournament, one of the 4 or 5, and you win, or sometimes come in second, you will win a spot in one of the 2 state tournaments. So Metro Baseball League has a state tournament, and then there's also Gopher State. And those are the 2 state tournaments, and the tournaments during the season that you play in, if you win, you qualify for a spot in one of the state tournaments, and those are in mid-July. All of those dates are up on the website. So again, you can see when those are going to be. Memorial Day weekend and 4th of July weekend are typically off limits. I don't think anybody schedules tournaments for those weekends. So you can be pretty safe in scheduling trips or events or whatever during those weekends. We do have a couple of other weekends that we try and avoid. So for instance, the weekend after the last day of school in Eden Prairie, we try to avoid that, but it's not 100%. So just know that many of your weekends this summer will be filled with tournaments, 8 o'clock games, 4 games in a day. All of those are possibilities. So prepare yourself in whatever way you need to do for that very real possibility. Okay, so let's talk about the cost of travel baseball for our 9 through 11s and 15s. That's what I'm talking about mostly right now. There are 2 fees. There's a base fee and there's a travel fee. So the base fee could be, it says 3 fees on there. It's really 2. We removed a tryout fee, so that used to be a 3rd one in there, but we removed that one for this year. The base fee is going to cover such expenses as the insurance that we are required to purchase for our association, the equipment that we have, so our portable mounds, our L screens, our balls, any of that other kind of stuff. That's what the base fee goes to cover. And the base fee is something that everybody pays. If you don't make a travel team, that base fee then gets applied to be on a community team. So that is across the board. Everyone's paying that base fee. It varies a little bit depending on the age. And then if you make a travel team, there is also a travel fee. And this is going to cover things like tournament fees, which we have to pay for every single tournament. In Minnesota, at least, we don't have to pay gate fees at tournaments. So that means that like when you show up at a gate or at a tournament, they're like, hey, you got to pay, $5 per person or $8 per person or whatever it is. We don't really need to do those because those are included in the tournament fees that you already paid in your travel fee. It also covers umpires. We have to pay for our umpires as well, the uniforms that each player receives, and then any additional equipment that we need. There are a few other things that kind of get lumped into that travel fee, but that's what the travel fee goes for. There is also a volunteer check. So I want to just talk a little bit about that. Every family is required to provide a $450 check at the start of the season per player. So if you've got two players, we need two checks for $450. This is a deposit, which is why we need it to be an actual paper check. We won't cash it. We hold on to it. And then you have the expectation of volunteering for 8 hours with the association over the course of the season. And that goes from, we have opportunities starting in March with our tryouts going all the way through October and some of our fall ball events. So there's a long stretch of time available to get your volunteer hours in. Most of those volunteer hours come in the form of working in our concession stand at Miller Park. And then some of them are also at our two tournaments that we host, May 10 through 11 at Miller Park, and then May 31st through June 2nd at Miller Park. We've got all kinds of things. We need people to work concessions, but we need people to help with fields. We need people to help with handing out awards or trophies or things like that. So we've got a lot of people that we need to help make that event run smoothly. And so those are the two biggest volunteer opportunities. Now, if for one reason or another, those do not work for you, please reach out to our volunteer coordinator. You'll find that information on the website. That we do have lots of other things that we need help with. And so we can find something for you to do if you would like to volunteer, but those things don't work for you for one reason or another. When you get to the end of the season in October, after fall ball is over, then if you have completed those 8 hours, cool, we rip up your check, you're done, you're good. However, if you have not completed those 8 hours, then we will go ahead and cash that check. So that's sort of how that volunteer check works. We just need to make sure that you're either going to volunteer or you're going to pay $450. Now, at the beginning of the season, if you're like, volunteering is not for me, I would rather just give you my money and I don't want to hear about it anymore, that's fine too. You'll just need to make sure you let us know in one way or another that, hey, I'm giving you this money. I don't want to volunteer. Here you go. Here's my $450. If you are a board member, a full board member, not an associate, but if you're a full board member, you do not need to pay that $450 or volunteer because you're already putting in many hours, over 8 hours to volunteer as a board member. If you are a head coach, you do not need to that fulfills your volunteer requirement. Assistant coaches, team managers do not, but head coaches do fulfill that. For bookkeeping purposes, it's really helpful if you still give us that $450 check, since we don't know exactly who the head coaches are right now. So just putting all of that out there for you. If you want a little bit more information about this, I've given you a lot here, but if you want a little bit more, that information is available on the travel website. And again, just so there's not any surprises, a couple of other things that you might find that you're going to need to shell out some more money for. A team fund. This depends on the specific team. I would say I've had to pay anywhere between $50 and $200. It just depends on the team and the age and what tournaments and things are planned for that year. The team fund is going to cover things like having team dinners when you're traveling, or maybe getting some Subway sandwiches or something like that in between games at a tournament. It might also cover things like a coach's gift at the end of the season, a party at the end of the season. There's a couple of other things that could cover. And again, it just kind of depends on what the team has planned for that year. But again, no surprises, that's what that is for. And then, of course, you are also, each family is responsible for their own travel to the travel tournament. So getting there, the hotel, and for the most of the whatever food you're going to eat while you're there as well, too. And then any equipment. So you need to have a helmet, a glove, a bat, cleats, and then any other equipment, a bag to put it all in. Those are all the responsibility of the families. If any of that is preventing you from participating in travel baseball, like you've got to make some hard decisions about what you're going to pay for because of that, or you just cannot afford it, please do reach out to myself, to our treasurer, to our board president. Any of those people should be able to help you. We never want anybody to not be able to play because of a financial situation. So if that's the case for you, please know there's no shame in that game. Let us know and we'll figure out something that works for you. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about coaches now. Who are our coaches? How do we find them? And a little bit just about coaches. So, coaches are volunteers who are almost always parents. They give a great deal of their personal and family time to coaching because they believe in creating a great baseball experience for all of the players. I will say that I have not encountered a single Eden Prairie baseball coach who seems like they're only in it so that they can elevate their own kid. Ryan and I interview all of our coaches. We know all of our coaches. We've talked to them all. We require them to submit an application. If we got any sort of a whiff of they're just in it for their own kid, they're not going to coach for us. So I think that's important for you all to know that we really have vetted all of these coaches and really believe that their hearts are in the right place and they have something to offer all of the players on the team. Um, they do have to submit applications, as I said, and we actually interview coaches and accept applications in November of the previous year. So for 2024, we already have accepted coach applications in November of 2023. We interviewed coaches that we didn't already know. We asked them about we're selecting them for a number of things. We're selecting them for their baseball knowledge, of course, their understanding of all of the aspects of the game, not just the rules of baseball, but all of the aspects of the game. And baseball's a mental sport. We want to make sure that they really understand that piece of it too. We also want to make sure that they are skilled at working with young people. So obviously, most of them are parents. So being a parent, you are working with your own young people, but we also look for coaches that maybe have volunteered as a youth leader in one way or another, or maybe they worked with Boys and Girls Clubs or Big Brothers Big Sisters. We have several who have done that. They coach other sports as well, or maybe they're a teacher in their work life. So we are looking for people that understand working with kids that are not just their own. And as I mentioned before, that they can help teach those skills of life through the game of baseball. That they're going to represent Eden Prairie well. So all of our coaches are representing our community when they're out there. And personally, as a Eden Prairie resident, I want to make sure that we're being represented well when those coaches are out there. So that's something that we're looking for too. And if we don't think that the coaches have something to offer in multiple of those areas, then they're not coaching for us. We're not offering them a role. Does that mean that we have assembled the world's best baseball coaches? I wish so, but no. But we have confidence that whatever issues come up, we can work through those. As I mentioned before, agreeing to coach does not secure a spot on a particular team. So if a coach comes and says, "Yeah, I want to coach, I want to be a head coach," they're not like automatically going to be a AAA coach just because that's what they want to do and they think they're going to be able to do that. We do not lock in our coaches until after the tryouts are completed, which means sometimes we've got to make some hard decisions as travel directors. We got to go scramble and find a different coach because the one we thought was going to coach the AA team, their kid did not make the AA team. So sometimes we have to scramble, and we're actually okay with that because we want to make sure that we're putting everybody in the right place for them. Something to keep in mind is with coaches, and I'll talk a little bit more about this again later, but we need to just keep in mind that as adults, we know we've got to interact with lots of people with different personality types, some people that kind of vibe with us and some people that don't. And we want to model that for our kids. So maybe the coach is a great coach, but just isn't the right coach for your kid, but it's your kid's coach for this season. So work with your kid to help figure out how to make the best of it, because that's a life skill right there. And that's one of the things that we're trying to teach kids. So Just can kind of keep those things in mind and be really aware of how you are interacting with the coach, speaking about the coach, those sorts of things. Those are your kids watching you, and you want to make sure that you're modeling what we want for our kids. And just in case, you can apply to be a coach for the following year. If you want to be an assistant coach for 2024, we can still accept applications for that. But if you're thinking of coaching next year too, the coach applications will open in November of 2024, and we would love to hear from you. I just want to make sure that you've taken a moment to read the quote that's on the page there. It says, it's simple. If you think you can do a better job than your kid's volunteer coach, give your time and energy and expertise and volunteer to coach yourself. If you're not willing to do that, then show the coach that is willing some respect. So just, I feel like probably everybody knows that, but it's nice to hear that sometimes too, and keep that in mind. Okay, so quick word about assistant coaches. They have all submitted an application to us as travel directors. There's a lot of information they have to fill out and let us know kind of what their experience is. The assistant coaches are selected by the head coaches after the team is formed. So once we know who the head coaches are going to be and what the teams are, we tell them, okay, these 4 parents have said that they would be like to be assistant coaches. We have accepted an application from them. Those are the 4 that you can reach out to. An application, but you think you might want to be an assistant coach, we'll show you where you can apply for that as well. Only our official, our named head coaches and assistant coaches can be on the field, in the dugout, during games. And then in terms of practices, different head coaches have different thoughts about that. So some of them are like, yeah, the more the merrier. We need all the help we can get during practices. Some are like, nope, we want this to be the coaching staff, and parents should not be here during practices. So just check in with your head coach about what they want for that. If you are a non-named coach, but you are assisting during practices and things like that, we do need to have you in our system with a background check. And so please just know that we'll have to ask you to do a background check to be I think we call them a helper, or a practice assistant or something along those lines. There is another role, is a team manager. A team manager is selected by the head coach, but if it's something that you're interested in volunteering to do, please be sure to let your head coach know. Team manager's responsibilities are to help with team communication. So whether it's through a team chat, or another app that's used for messaging, or sending emails, whatever it is, helping the head coach with some communication for the team. It might also be some scheduling, helping to schedule practices or makeup games or things like that. Helping with travel arrangements, so like making hotel reservations, arranging for team dinners at a hotel or wherever you might be traveling, things like that. You might arrange for food during games. So if you've got, 2 games during a tournament and you've got a break in the middle of them, you might be the one arranging for food to be delivered or brought or picked up or whatever it is, for kids in between. The other thing that the team manager needs to do is collect all players' birth certificates and then the coach safety certificates, and then present those at each tournament. That's a requirement at each tournament, that birth certificates and safety certificates are shown and before the team can play. And so the team manager is responsible for doing that. The team manager is also going to manage the team fund, work with the head coach to determine how much money you want in the team fund, and then managing that. And then if you want to be extra, you might also make some swag bags for the players. You might arrange, often our team managers have done that at our travel tournament. The boys all get a bag. And I said boys, we can have boys or girls playing baseball. You might arrange for end of the season coach gifts, parties, things like that, as well as the team manager. So those are some things that a team manager might do. Playing time. So Our Eden Prairie's playing time policy is that in our 9U through 13U, each player is going to have approximately equal playing time over the course of the season. Now, nobody is getting out and like looking at exactly how many innings everybody played, but coaches do look at that information. And, oh, shoot, this kid's played 6 less innings than everybody else on the team. They're going to try and adjust for that. It's not always going to be perfect, but that is the goal, is to get it as close as possible to being equal over the course of the season. So that's another thing to keep in mind. It's over the course of the season. It might not be at every single point in time it's going to be equal, but it should even out over the course of the season. And then for 14 through 15-year-olds, our grades 8 through 9, they're going to receive at least 50% playing time. So there's no longer that expectation that it's going to be equal, but they're going to at least have 50% playing time. It still comes out fairly equal, but it's just not as much of an expectation at that age level. Some things that can affect that equal playing time are player attendance. Obviously, if a player misses a game, 2 games, 3 games, they're not going to have the same number of innings played as everybody else on the team. Tournaments and versus league games, and their division level too. So the difference between tournaments and league games: in a league game, those are the weekday games, the 14 games that we're playing against the others in our region. Those are about development, and that is the purpose for those games. It is about player development. So there should be relatively equal playing time across league games. You might also, as a parent, be kind of scratching your head at some of the decisions that the coach is making during league games. Like, what in the heck? We're trying to win here. Why do they put the kid in that doesn't pitch? It's because it's development. We're trying to get everybody to learn to pitch and get comfortable playing all those different spots, even if it means that they don't win the game. The league games, honestly, win, lose, obviously it feels great to lose, and it's kind of can get demoralizing if they lose every game. But we want kids, but the goal is for development. So that's what we're looking for in those league games. And again, you can expect playing time to be relatively equal given solid attendance and those sorts of things. Tournaments, however, we're playing to win. We want to win those the championships at the tournament so that we can get a spot on the state tournament as well. And then even if they've already got a spot in a state tournament and they still have more tournaments to play, they want to continue to win those, because that is something that's going to be looked at when they're seeding the state tournaments as well. So tournaments are definitely more competitive. We're playing to win. Playing time may not be equal during a tournament. You might also see different questionable choices that a coach is making. You might be upset that your player isn't in the game, and that is often a choice, a strategic choice that the coach is making. So know that you might see a difference between league games and tournament games as well. And when we say equal playing time, we're talking about playing, how many innings they spend on the bench or actually playing. It's not specific to position. So we're not saying they're going to have equal amount of time at all the positions or anything like that. It's playing in the field or sitting on the bench. If your player has a specific position they really want to play, or they really want to try out, or they really want to get better at, or they feel like, man, I feel like I'm sitting out a lot. I'm feeling kind of upset about that. We're teaching life skills here. We want to encourage those kids to talk to the coach. So rather than parent getting all upset and texting the coach, we want to encourage the kid to go advocate for themselves to the coach. We also talk to the coaches about this, so the coaches know that the players are going to be expected and encouraged to come to the coaches too. So that's one of the things that we're looking for, that we want to help encourage the kids to go advocate for themselves, speak up for yourself, say what you need, learn how to ask respectfully for what it is you want. That's what we're trying to do here. So before a parent gets all like worked up and starts, I'm gonna send an email to that coach, encourage your kid to go have a respectful conversation with that coach. And if that doesn't work out, then we can kind of go to the next step. But make that the first step is encouraging your child. Even our 9s and 10s, we want them to go talk to the coach too. It's a great skill to learn. Okay, so conduct expectations. Obviously, I think if I asked any single parent, everybody would kind of know what's expected of them. But sometimes we get in the heat of the moment and we kind of forget about those things. And it's important to remember that, again, our kids are watching. They know, they see what we're doing. Our own kids, our teammates' kids, everybody sees what's going on with the adults. So we need to make sure that we're aware of that. We're also representing Eden Prairie. All of us are representing Eden Prairie. When you're wearing your Eagles gear, especially, everyone knows you represent Eden Prairie, and we want to be able to have everybody else out there say, man, those Eden Prairie parents and teams and coaches, they're all so nice and respectful and great. So a couple of things we want to make sure that we're doing here, that we're showing that our players are showing respect for coaches, respect for their teammates, respect for the umpires. That's huge. Respect for their opponents, respect for the game. And the expectation is that players have issues, they're going to go to their coach first. Obviously, talk to parents, but that they're going to go to their coach. We're not going to have like this whole like side thing happening that bubbles up. We really want there to be an open conversation with the coaches. And if we get to a different situation where that's not working for some reason, then we can have the travel directors kind of help facilitate some things. I'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. But with our kids, with our players, again, going back to our mission that we're trying to get them ready for life through the game of baseball. So we're using baseball as a vehicle to teach those skills. Think about your own life as an adult. We all have to work with people we don't like. We all have to have coaches or bosses that maybe just don't jive with us really well. So we want to make sure that we're modeling how to manage that in our kids as well, and teaching them how to deal with that. Baseball is also a game of failure. You fail more than you succeed in baseball. No matter how successful you are, you're always going to fail more than you succeed. So this is a really good opportunity to help our kids learn how to deal with failure and disappointment and finding opportunity in failure, and how to be a gracious winner and how to be a gracious loser. So all of those things are really important. That's one of the things we're trying to teach the kids, and we hope everybody's helping to reinforce that. In terms of parents, we want you all remember that our volunteer coaches, they're the ones that are coaching, and we want to let them coach. So obviously we know we've got like opinions about how our kids should do things, but the coaches are their coaches, and we want to make sure that we're letting them coach. Umpires are huge. Obviously, I think everybody, I know it's part of the sport that umpires we sometimes get upset with, but we don't have professional umpires in Eden Prairie Baseball Association. They do get paid, but that's not like their life, the thing that they do with their entire life. And many of our umpires are young and just starting out and learning how to be an umpire as well. So we want to make sure we're giving them grace. We've actually had a hard time in the past few years, and this is not just Eden Prairie, this is across the board, getting umpires, because a lot of them are like, look, I don't want to deal with it. I don't want, especially it's the parents I don't want to deal with. So we don't want to be those parents. We want to be the ones that help umpires learn and get better, and they're never going to be perfect ever, ever, ever. So they're going to make mistakes, and we want to give them some grace. If there is an issue with an umpire, please let the head coach deal with it. The head coach is in charge of dealing with the umpire. They're also in charge of dealing with unruly parents. So I don't want to put that on our head coaches. They already do so much. I don't want them to have to deal with parents who are not behaving in the way that we want them to behave. So please self-monitor. I'm going to guess if you're watching this video, you're the kind of parent that doesn't have a problem with that anyway, but just know that that's something that we're trying to watch and be careful for. And then also other parents, I have been in many, many games where either the parents on our own team are driving me crazy, or the parents on the other team are really obnoxious. It happens. Again, we're modeling, we're trying to just represent Eden very well. We're trying to model for our kids how to behave. So, so please just keep all of that in mind when you're dealing with things. If you need to go take a walk down the baseline and into the outfield to just be somewhere where you can say bad things and nobody else will hear, please do that. A couple of things to remember. Fastest way to turn your child into an entitled, selfish teen cancer is by talking trash and undermining the coaching staff to and around your child. So if you want to sabotage your kid's athletic experience, keep that up. So again, please just be modeling that respectfulness at all times. Was at my daughter's practice and was asked why I sit alone at the games and practices. And I told them because I don't like to hear grown men and women bash kids or their coaches. I can watch my kid play and let the coach, and I don't need to hear 40 other people trying to do his job. So just some lovely things to remember. If you haven't ever looked up the Reformed Sports Project or the Reformed Sports Parent, I think it goes by both of those names. I highly recommend you to look for both of those or for that. There's a lot of other people out there too that are kind of sharing some good stuff about sports and coaching and parenting and supporting your athlete. So definitely some things to kind of keep an eye out for. Okay, I want to say a few words about Game Changer. If you're new, you might not know what Game Changer is. It's a blessing and a curse. Let me tell you what. Game Changer is an app that allows you to keep score and keep tabs on what's going on in the game. It also has a streaming option, which I use for my relatives that live out of state, and they love it. But being in charge of keeping score in Game Changer is a lot. It can be a really big challenge. We ask that our coaches do not keep Game Changer on the field. We ask that they have somebody else do it. It's definitely something that is a big responsibility. And if you are interested in doing it, I find it very fulfilling personally, but it can be a little stressful. So I highly recommend going to the Game Changer website. They've got tons of tutorials and practice things. You can also sort of like practice score. You can watch a game on TV and practice score it on there so you can kind of get the feel for how it works if you're new to it. MBL does require that we keep a record of the game and that we have to keep it by both teams. They used to require we did this in a paper book, and now they have accepted that we can do it in Game Changer too. Sometimes coaches will also do a paper book in addition to Game Changer. That's fine if they want to do that, but Game Changer needs to be kept usually by a parent, somebody not sitting in the dugout and not on the field. If you're going to do it, you do need to know that the things that are like the deep statistics, like errors, pitch types, things like that, you do not need to know those. Those are anecdotal. If you feel comfortable putting those in there, cool, but you don't need to put those in there. We don't look at that. The travel directors, we will sometimes look at statistics and but the coaches, sorry, we don't look at the statistics. We sometimes will use them in later years if we don't have enough information. But the statistics they're not a big deal. We're not looking at those. Coaches aren't really looking at those. They might be looking to see, how many innings has this kid been sitting or things like that. But they're not looking deeply into the statistics about errors and hits and things like that. It's really just to track what happened in the game. So if you are the person who is doing Game Changer, please know that you don't need to go. We don't need to have people coming to you and saying you put that down as an error and that was a hit, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Please leave the Game Changer alone. If you are the Game Changer, let people know it doesn't matter. Leave it alone. But if there is a situation where you're the Game Changer is wrong and we need to get this fixed, if it's not the score is wrong or something along those lines, there's an incorrect number of outs, something like that. If it's something like that should have been a hit and you scored it as an error, wait till the end of the game. Please don't talk to the Game Changer in the middle of the game. Really appreciate that. Okay, we're getting to the end here. I promise we're close. Addressing issues. So if you do have an issue with your coach, here are the steps we would like you to follow. So Again, we want the player to be the one to go to the coach. We want, and that's across all age levels. We want parents, please encourage your player to go do this. Um, some issues are going to be bigger than others, and that's not the appropriate first step. But the vast majority of them, that is the appropriate first step. We're trying to teach kids to advocate for themselves. You can plan and rehearse the conversation at home. Like, what are you going to say? How are you going to say it? When are you going to go talk to the coach? Before practice, after practice? What are you going to say about it? And maybe if it was me, I might like send my coach a little text to just say like, "Hey, my kid's going to come talk to you after practice. He has something he wants to share with you," and not leave it at that. Um, if that doesn't work, or for some reason it's not the appropriate situation, then the parent can go talk to the coach, but never, ever, ever during a game. And also, probably like maybe not right before a game either. Just be like, have some awareness about when is the right time to talk to the coach. So during a game, never, ever. Before and after is probably not the right time either. We like to talk about the 24-hour rule. So you're all fired up about something, you really want to go talk to the coach right now and get this taken care of, give it a day. Sleep on it, wake up the next morning, decide like, "Hey, you know what? Not such a big deal. I thought it was a bigger deal. I feel like I've thought through it a little bit more and it's cool now." So please give it a 24-hour rule. Make notes about what's bothering you if you need to, and see if they're still bothering you the next day. And always assume positive intent. Again, we have talked to these coaches. We believe that they are all they have their hearts in the right place. They know what to do, but just assume positive intent. Um, and then if none of that is working, or you've tried it, you didn't get your issue resolved, then please come talk to travel directors. But our first question is going to be, did your kid talk to the coach, and did you wait 24 hours and try to talk to the coach respectfully too? Okay, surveys. We do send out a mid-season survey. I think that comes out around mid-May. And then we'll do another end of the season survey. If you are having some sort of an issue, the survey is not the first time we should be hearing about it. So you should have already talked to a coach. You should have encouraged your kid to talk to the coach, or whatever the situation is. If you can't resolve it, please make sure you come to us. We don't want to get something in our mid-season survey that says like, "This coach has just been a hot mess from the start to finish, and we're really upset about this." Like, "Hey, well, we don't want to hear about it for the first time in the mid-season survey or the end of season survey." So we want you to be honest. We want you to be clear. We want to know about what's going on, but don't make that the only way that you communicate with us, and let us know what the issues are. Okay, so that is the end of this presentation. I have covered a lot. If you still have questions, totally understandable. Please reach out to myself and Ryan by emailing traveldirectors@epbaseball.com. We are happy to answer questions for you, give you whatever else you need to know to make a decision about whether or not you want to play travel, or if you've got questions about how something works, whatever, let us know. Thank you so much, and we look forward to an awesome season.